talked about these two concepts, self-interest and social interest, and I want to just point out some steps that we can use to really help people keep balance between these two things, because that's where we want to be. We want to be in a place where we have balance between our self-interest and our social interests. And so first of all, when we talk about particularly workplace pieces or education pieces, the first thing in terms of self-interest that we have to recognize is that it should be in an individual's if we want to really engage them, we have to be honest and truthful that engaging in the things of the workplace will allow them to keep their job. So it is in their best interest as individuals to keep their job or to keep their place in the organization, particularly if that's a value to them. The second is that to really connect people on this esteem level. So when we talk about self-interest, when we try to answer that question, what's in it for me, sometimes it's about the basic necessities of keeping a job, of getting the resources that people need for their families and for themselves to sustain themselves. So that becomes important. Sometimes when we engage in the self-interest piece, it's because there is either an ego-based or sometimes that gets a bad rap, but there is this need to be honored and connected with folks in such a way that I, as an individual, get affirmed, right? So appealing to people's need to be esteemed or to be affirmed is a great way to engage and answer that question, what's in it for me? And lastly, that individuals have a set of values, and so what's in it for me? If you participate in these particular activities, these may undergird your values, or we've asked you to participate in these things because of your values. And so once we understand how to answer that question, that one, you get to keep the resources that you and the advantages that you get by being a part of this organization, self-interest, that you will be esteemed, you will be affirmed by the community, by your supervisor, by your teachers, by other educators, self-interest. Right, and lastly, that your values won't be in conflict with what we're trying to do in this organization, and so people's values become important. And lastly, when we start talking about the social interest, so how do I balance the social interest stuff? Well, one of the things is that you have to recognize that we are either in a workplace, in a school setting, in a government setting. We're in a place where we are all focused on the same thing. We're all moving towards the organization's goals, the organization's mission, the vision that the leaders have for this organization. And so that is in our best social interest to work with everyone in our organization to move people towards that mission, towards the vision that the leadership has, right? And then also express that social interest is also expressed through community good, that our working together, our volunteering, our engaging the community is good for us, but it's also good for business, right? So community good is extremely important. And lastly, when we talk about this social interest stuff, we do better when we're working together on things. Many hands make things a lot complicated, but they can also get a lot of stuff done. And so once we engage with one another, we can understand that we can actually get some things done. And in some cases, it may seem more complex, or it may add a delay to the system to have more people involved, but I will tell you that the buy-in that you get from engaging everyone in the process outweighs those minor bumps in the road. Okay, and so as leaders, it becomes our job to help individuals balance the self-interest with their social interest. And once we're able to engage people in that, in striking that balance, then we'll get a more productive workforce. And so I encourage you to think about it. What is it that motivates you? Are you high on your self-interest, or are you low on your social interests? Or are you high on your social interest and low on your self-interest? And whatever you find is the case, how can you strike that balance? How do you engage in such a way that you're able to share your gifts and talents with others and be recognized for the gifts and talents that you have? I would say that an extreme, version of self-interest is actually, depression, and not necessarily clinical depression, but the blues of being sad. And how do you overcome the blues of being sad? Well, more often than not, part of the problem is you've been focusing on yourself. But if you want to get over those blues, you want to get over that stuff, do something for someone else. Social interest. And so I can even think of a time when I had the blues. My intention was not to be around anyone. I would isolate myself so that I could wallow in this self-interest. So I could, and I would do crazy things, like I wouldn't bathe. I'd wear the same clothes. I wouldn't, brush my teeth or comb my hair. And, I was really just feeling bad, and so I wanted to look bad. And all the while, what that's actually doing is reinforcing my self-interest, because no one wants to be around someone who's stinky and hasn't brushed their teeth or combed their hair or changed clothes in 3 days, right? But one of the things that my sister, who's very wise, she did was she brought my niece over when I was, going through those blues situations, and my niece was just a bundle of joy. She made me laugh. She made me think about things outside of myself. And so then I engaged in something outside of myself, and I had some social interest, right? And so having this balance between these two things is great. At the same time, again, when our organizations ask us to be martyrs, to sacrifice ourselves for the good of the whole, that also can have some negative ramifications. And so that becomes important to make sure that we encourage people to strike that balance between these two concepts. And once we understand that we can strike a balance, and it may not necessarily be a perfect balance, and I may, sway one way or another, or to one side or another more often than I should, but being conscious of this balance really helps us to identify our behaviors, and actually helps us to create better lives for ourselves and better work for our organization.